You're listening to the Farm Report Podcast with Jake and Corey, brought to you by Indians Baseball Insider and broadcast on the Smoke Signals Podcast Network. We're talking Tribe.
Listen, let's play ball. Shoot now, wild. Let's play ball, baby. Bang down the stones. Play ball.
Well, good day, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever, whenever you happen to be tuning in, we are glad to have you aboard. I'm Jake Dungan, minor league content coordinator for Indians Baseball Insider, and this is the Farm Report Podcast. We apologize for the bit of the layoff between episodes. Things are starting to get busy for me and, of course, my co-host, Corey Christen, Mahoning Valley Scrappers beat writer. But we're back, and we're here to talk all about September call-ups, and minor league season's almost over, and now we get to see some of these guys make their bones with the big league club. How are you doing tonight?
Jake, I'm good. I'm glad to be back. I know we had a little hiatus there, but I'm sure that as time comes over and we have now, let's see, it'll be September 1st when this gets posted and when people are listening. So some of these calls will already happen. The Indians are making moves. Certainly the acquisition of a familiar face in Coco Crisp in the big league club, but this is really the time for the minor leagues when players get moved, when prospects get, sent to different levels. I know in Mahoning Valley, there's movement going on there. They're in a bit of a playoff race, and as is Lynchburg, Columbus, and Akron. So, I mean, with the minor league seasons coming to an end pretty soon, it's getting pretty hectic for us here. And, I don't think we would have it any other way. I'm glad to be back. I'm ready to go, especially after that week break, Jake.
And not to mention, you got Fall League and Instructional League coming up in Arizona, which I will be still got a couple of loose ends to tie up, but about 95% sure I'll be making it down there for at least a 4-day trip down to Arizona for Instructs and Fall League action. So stay tuned for that. But right now we're focusing on what's happening with the big league club and who from the minor leagues who we've been following all year long is going to be up that as rosters expand come tomorrow to be able to get their a little bit brief snapshot of their of the major leagues and to show what the big league guys what they have, show Terry Francona what they have. You got a little bit of that going already with the call up of Indians relief pitcher Percy Garner. Coming up from the Clippers. Now, Garner has a great story. Originally came up with the Phillies as a starter. He not that great as a starter. I mean, he was okay at times, but really wasn't quite working out the way the Phillies had expected. I know he's a little bit older, 27, but going on 28. But he signs with the Indians. The last couple seasons, been working with them out of the bullpen. After they signed with them, they saw some things in him, made some adjustments, moved him to the bullpen, and he has just been 16. He has been lights out coming out of the bullpen for the Tribe. 1.83 ERA between Akron and Columbus in 41 games. So a sub-2 ERA at both places. He's only allowed 52 hits and 22 walks in 78 and 2/3 innings. He has 70 strikeouts, which may not seem like a ton for a reliever, especially for a guy who throws in the mid to upper 90s like he does. But he is so good at limiting ground balls, and he can get the strikeouts. He has good stuff, too. A good fastball, good breaking stuff. He doesn't give up home runs, and pretty much just doesn't give up base runners. And whatever the Indians saw in him and work with him the last couple seasons, it has really taken hold and come to fruition this year. And getting to know him in Akron, he is just an awesome dude to get to know. I've never laughed so much in an interview than when talking to him. He's a funny guy. And, Dover, Ohio native, so he's basically this is basically a homecoming for him. And now he gets childhood dream come true, going up to the Indians. Corey, what are your thoughts?
You know what, Jake, and you and I were talking off air. He actually lived at his home in Dover and drove to Akron for games there, so that's pretty neat. I'm looking up scouting reports on him, and I didn't know this until now, but he went to Ball State on a football scholarship. Listen to his senior year in high school: 4,400 yards passing, 43 touchdowns, 700 yards rushing, and 17 total touchdowns. So he got a football scholarship to Ball State, which is no slouch in football either, might I add. He was redshirted, then he switched to baseball in 2009, and he pitched 17 games in that season, and he's really developed himself into quite an arm. I mean, he hits mid-90s with that fastball. He can get 96, 97 at times. He's a fastball guy, and he's really turned it around since they kind of moved him. And this is really back when he was with the Phillies. They kind of started to transition him from a starter. They had him over to the bullpen, and the transition for him has been really good there. I mean, his splits, 2014, he made 16 starts and a 4.61 ERA. 2013, 25 starts and a 4.41 ERA. 2012, 26 starts and a 4.84 ERA. And now 41 appearances out of the bullpen and a 1.83 ERA. He's really found his niche back there as a reliever. And you know what? He's even said when he was called up and he was getting quotes from media, he's telling media this happened before September. This happened on August 31st. And, for him to be the first one up, he even said that gives him a little more confidence. So this young pitching crop, Jake, that you and I have been talking about and writing about all season, it's kind of going to start to show as these September call-ups come up. So, I mean, we saw it with Clevenger earlier in the year. We saw a spot start with Morimondo. But now, are you going to see the guys like Percy Gardner and maybe another reliever and maybe a Jeff Johnson and then some more starting help and Adam Plutko and guys like that in Columbus who are ready to go? Are we going to start to see these guys in the 40-mans when they expand? So I think Percy, I think he, like you said, he's well-deserving. He's got the frame for pitching, too. I mean, he's 6'3", 225. He's got the frame for it. Again, he throws downhill with that mid-90s fastball. I like to see what he can do in the back of that bullpen, especially, with guys like Brian Shaw, especially with guys that are getting taxed a little bit more than you would like to see at this point. I think you need to have depth, and you got to have fresh arms ready to go for this time of year. And, Percy's 27 years old. He's no 20-year-old, 21-year-old rookie who may get the shakes every here and then when he gets on the mound. He's an older guy, and he's a little more experienced. So I think he should settle in nicely, and I'm curious to see how he'll do in Cleveland. I think it'll translate well.
Well, I hope so, too, because it was just complete, like I said, a great story. And I had an article about him, which on the site. I tweeted it out again today. It's currently pinned to my Twitter profile if you want to give it a read. Just talking about him coming back home to Ohio and transitioning to the bullpen and really finding new life as a reliever. And it's been a great transition to watch because we got to see it, at least I did, in Akron for the first half of the season. And really, he had a lot of ups coming out of the bullpen for Akron. He had a little bit of downs, too. There was a little bit of adjustment period still going on. But then he goes to Columbus and just lights out. And see that call up. And I really hope that Terry Francona uses him. I know he has a little bit of he's a little bit apprehensive to using especially rookie relievers in key situations. But I would hope that, like you said, Garner, a major league experience, has that more experience at the minor league level, being sorts of journeyman at the minor leagues that kind of that kind of thing where Tito gives him more chances to prove himself and maybe possibly work his way into the conversation for next year's bullpen. And he has the stuff to do it. And I think that he can pitch. The other thing I should mention about him is, as a former starter, he can pitch you multiple innings. He'll give you 3 innings without breaking a sweat. I mean, that's pretty much, if you look at his game logs for Akron, I haven't really looked at what he's done in Columbus, but for Akron this year, it seems like every game, it's maybe 5 games, 4 out of 5 games, 3 innings pitched, 3 innings pitched, 3 innings pitched. And he would just be lights out, getting strikeouts, getting ground balls. So he can give you So he can give you innings. He can pitch either in the late innings. He can pitch in mop-up duty. Kind of reminds me a little bit of what Dan Otero has done for the Indians this season. Maybe he can be version of Dan Otero coming out of that bullpen. Although I think he has better stuff than Otero does, even though he has pitched so well for the Tribe this year.
Well, even so, look at Gardner's stats in AAA. Opponents are hitting 156 off him, and he has a 0.94 whip. So, I mean, he's got swing and miss stuff. He's got the stuff, 3.92 ground outs per air out, so he's getting the ground balls induced. And you brought up a good point, Jake. I want to kind of touch on this, too, a little more. The impact that he could have on next year's bullpen, too. Look at how the Indians locked the starting rotation up, and now you have Andrew Miller and Cody Allen ready to go for next season already. A Percy Gardner with a little bit of work now and given the Indians going a postseason race, he'll get a little experience there too. Look at the Royals back in 2014 when they were in the World Series. They had Brandon Finnegan, a guy like him who just came out of college to pitch in the playoffs. Then he got ready to go in 2015, and he really made an impact on that club when they won the World Series. So I think Percy Gardner, and not, I'm not trying to compare him to Finnegan, but I think Percy Gardner, if you get a guy like this some experience now, what could he do for your bullpen next season? I think you bring up a good point there. In addition to Gardner, you look maybe at Jeff Johnson, you look at an Armstrong or a Austin Adams. Maybe you bring those guys up for a couple more auditions in next season. But for the 40-man right now, for Gardner to get this first call up to kind of break the seal, if you will, I think this is the right guy for right now. Again, he's got the experience and I think that's very important. Again, you're not tossing out a 20-year-old kid who's never seen the bright lights Progressive Field. And I know Gardner hasn't had any major league experience, but he's been around a bit. So, it's not like he doesn't have the talent. He's a former second-round pick, and I think people forget that. So, I'm excited to see what he can do. And again, you mentioned it. I hope Tito can figure out how to use him, where to use him, when to use him. Is he more of your seventh inning guy? Is he your sixth inning guy? If you need him, I think this is a good fit for this club right now where they need him.
I agree, and we should also mention that although this is mostly just a paper move, just to kind of manipulate the roster ahead of the actual expansion. They sent Sean Armstrong on paper, Lake County, and I don't think he's actually in. If you're going to Classic Park and looking for Sean Armstrong, I don't think you would find him there. Let's just put it that way. I think he'll be back just as soon as rosters expand. So I wanted to move on, though, talk about some of the other potential call-ups. Another interesting area that could be affected by roster expansion is that back of the starting rotation, because we're all familiar with how Josh Tomlin is pitching right now. And I've noticed this on Twitter. I think he's just tired because he hasn't had this kind of workload. And I don't want to make this the whole thing about Josh Tomlin. I want to move on to possibly who could take his spot in the rotation if the Indians felt like they needed to go that way. Run in September, because the way Tomlin's pitching, you can't put him out there every fifth day. The way if he's not going to give you innings, he's not going to give you a chance to win. So looking at the options, first of all, that Tito said before yesterday's game, that would be Tuesday's game as we were recording this, before Tomlin's start, that Mike Clevenger would likely not be used at the start of the rest of the year because he likes using him in the bullpen. That, of course, could change in the discussions on what they do with Tomlin. But right now, I think we should have just assumed that Clevenger is staying in the bullpen. That makes things interesting for the roster expansion because you got some pretty viable candidates. You have Ryan Merritt, Adam Plutko, and Sean Morimondo. Morimondo, you mentioned, already has seen some experience as a spot starter, although Ryan Merritt has been up in Cleveland before as a reliever, pitched pretty well there. Plutko would be fresh face in the major leagues, but he's got great stuff, very polished, and maybe he can relate to his former teammate Trevor Bauer if he comes up. It makes things interesting if the Indians decide to if they decide to either stick with Tomlin, maybe either give him a couple of days off, maybe put a rookie in there for a spot starter too, or if they just decide to go full-blown in there. Let him ride it out the rest of September. I mean, they could do it with it. Have like a revolving door. Make it with a couple guys, whether it's Merritt. I just want to know, Corey, what are your thoughts on these three main guys? And I should also note Cody Anderson probably not available as a starter because he's been pitching out of the bullpen for Columbus. So it's pretty much down to those three guys right now.
That's interesting because I thought Clevenger did I thought he did as well as you could project when he came in to start before, during the midseason. I hope you're wrong about Tomlin and that he's not tired, even though I think that's the case as well. I hope we're wrong about this because, man, did he look good this season. He looked good for quite a while. There's certainly guys that could slide in. I think Adam Plutko, I'd put him at the top of the list. What he's done this season in AAA has been great. And for a guy who kind of got a little recognition for it along the way too, I think Plutko is ready to go. Moramondo, I know he had a spot start and it was a tough gig for him. But he's ready. Ryan Merritt, they already gave him the taste of the bullpen back there. But I'm curious because once you get into the postseason, you're going to probably go to that four-man rotation anyway. So you'd figure Kluber, Carrasco, Salazar, Bauer, right? Well, that's great, but then you would have guys like this, like Moramondo and Plutko and Merritt go back in the bullpen. So maybe that explains Tito's rationale for automatically sticking Mike Clevenger back there. Maybe he wants Clevenger to sit back there and get used to the routine of working as a bullpen reliever and working as, instead of going out every fifth day and getting in his routine for that. Maybe he's instead getting ready for, a couple of relief appearances a week or three relief appearances a week. And especially, again, I mentioned it earlier, Otero, Shaw, those guys are starting to get taxed a bit. So I think it's a good move to have a guy ready for that fifth spot. But keep in mind, once we get into October, once postseason play starts, you're probably going to shrink that rotation down a bit. And then you're going to keep a couple of those guys back in that bullpen. So maybe we can assume Clevenger would be on a postseason roster. And again, this is all, nothing's said and done yet. So, this is all if. I just want to know if you're going to have this fifth starter, how much longer are you going to draw it out? And are you going to do the revolving door method? Because I think that would work the best rather than getting one guy ready to go and then all of a sudden he's got to move back to the bullpen or he's not even on the postseason roster. So I'm curious to see how the Indians are going to handle this. I think all three guys that we mentioned are capable of doing it, of getting in that fifth spot in the rotation and getting to go there. But I'm curious to see how the Indians are going to handle this.
Absolutely. I love all the guys. Moramondo had a great start to the year. He's kind of in the second half, but he's still putting up good numbers in Columbus. And pretty much a consummate professional on the mound. There's and I don't want to make this a definite comparison, but in watching him on the mound and what he would do in Akron, there's a lot of him, and just that he knows he goes out and he does his job, and he knows what his job is, and he knows what he needs to do. So I'm not saying he's anything like that. His pitching is at Kluber's level, but just as far as his just as far as his mindset when he takes the mound and how he approaches his between start routine and everything, I think it's a lot like the way Kluber is very, very all business like. Ryan Merritt has been unbelievable, almost unhittable in the month of August. I mean, he's 4-0 in 6 games, 5 August starts. He has a 1.34 ERA. He's even getting swings and misses, 33.2 innings. He has 24 strikeouts, which is pretty impressive for a guy who doesn't necessarily get the swings and misses. He's a pitch-to-contact guy. He's not giving up a ton of hits. He doesn't walk anybody. So I would actually say that Ryan Merritt might, just because he has best experience in Cleveland. I mean, I know Moramondo has had experience too, but it hasn't gone so well for him. I would say Ryan Merritt might be the first go-to guy I would call a fifth starter spot, whether it's a spot start or whether it's like a long-term thing in September. He would be my go-to guy, but I certainly would make a case for all three of them. And as far as Mike Clevenger is concerned, I'm actually very intrigued that Tito is sticking to his guns and keeping him into the bullpen. Because watching how he's pitched out of the bullpen lately, I think he could be a really good weapon for the Indians in October. If a starter was not able to pitch as well as we would hope, Clevenger could go out there and give you 3 or 4 really solid innings if you need him to. And even if you want to bring him in a key spot like they did in that game against Toronto with base loaded in with Edwin Encarnacion at the plate, and he got the strikeout there. I think he could be a really dynamic weapon out of the bullpen for the Tribe. So very interesting to see how the pitching situation plays out.
Yeah, I agree. I just want to know, I like having the 4-man rotation come October, and I want to see how these guys, especially, the Morimondo, Plutko, Merritt, those guys coming up, even the relievers, Gardner, maybe Jeff Johnson, whoever it may be. I'm curious to see how these guys react to being thrown into a situation like this where the team is winning, the team is on a roll, it has great team chemistry. How do you as a new guy fit in? And you have to do it pretty quickly because you're winning. You got to win ball games. So they all have the talent, and that's what's great about this organization is they built the depth at this higher level now to where they have the ability to call 3 or 4 guys up and not really have to worry as much as some other teams might. So, yeah, I'm right with you, Jake. I'm curious to see how the Indians are going to handle this. I think they'll do it well. I think they'll handle it well. But, time will tell, I do suppose.
All right, so let's move on to position player side, because there are 2 names, I think, when we talk about Indians roster expansion this year that I think are at foremost on most people's minds. First guy I want to talk about is a guy who not only deserves to be called up at the start of September, but I think we could make a case that he should have been called up like 4 to 6 weeks ago. Diaz. And I mean, I could go through the numbers talking about what he's done at Columbus this season, but Yandy Diaz is really good at playing baseball, and I am so excited to see him possibly get called up for the stretch run, play a little third base, play a little outfield. He can in there wherever you want. And we all know about his knack for getting on base. He can hit the ball, can hit for a little bit of power, but his eye at the plate is sensational, and his approach I think could play up at any league at any level. So time to call up Yandy Diaz, and is it well overdue?
Oh my gosh, I think can I say it's too late? No, I'm kidding. It's not too late to call him up, but man, it's almost about time, I've been waiting for this. I've been waiting to see what he could do. And I have some people come up to me, and they said, Giovanni Urshela was here last year. He's got the experience. He could play still. I'm like, no, listen, you got to learn about Yandy Diaz a little bit. I mean, this guy is bona fide. He is just he can hit the ball. He playing hits. You mentioned it. He knows how to play baseball. He is a baseball player. Where they slot him now, Jose Ramirez has been absolutely outstanding at third base, and I don't think you're going to move him away from that. So the outfield becomes a question, and so you look at the acquisition of Coco Crisp, which they just made, and you might bring Bradley Zimmer up too. So now you have Davis, Naquin, Chisenhall, Coco, Zimmer, Yandy. I mean, you have 6, you have maybe 7 options out there in that outfield. I'm curious to see how they're going to play this out for the postseason. Do you how many outfielders do you keep on the roster? Do you keep 4 or 5? And if so, does Yandy slide in as a utility infielder? And I think, I think you can use his production at the plate. I think they keep him solely because he's hitting the cover off the ball, and he has ever since he got to AAA this season. I'm ready for him. I'm excited to have him. I think he's ready, and to have him produce at this level would be absolutely huge. It would be a going into September and maybe even into October.
Yeah, and you don't have to talk to a bigger fan of Yandy Diaz than myself because I saw him all of last season dominate the Eastern League. Then the start of this season, saw him a little bit before he got called up to AAA. He just like we said, he knows how to play baseball, and he's an athlete. He is built like one of the has some of the finest athletic build of any come through Akron. I mean, he's got arms like tree trunks. He is a very strong, very very strong individual as far as upper body strength is concerned, and he's gotten a little bit of experience and exposure in the outfield. He's been, I've read scouting reports that said he's average in the outfield, which is not a bad thing for somebody who just getting used to pro ball. Remember, he only came over from Cuba a couple years ago, so he's playing in the outfield. He's very good at third base. He was one of the top defenders in the Eastern League. I think he won an award for it. I can't remember specifically what the award was, but he played a little bit of second base. Not so good there, but at least he gives you that kind of versatility, and he can make things happen at the plate. So for me to see him get called up, and but I'm excited to see what he can do in September because I just don't see how you don't call him up at this point. Versatility, the upside he brings at the plate, and the possible future he brings either at third base or in the outfield.
Absolutely, I think he's ready, and honestly, it's just time to see what he can do. And even so, even in the next season, he'll be here for quite some time, and I think he has the skills to stay up at the big league level and succeed at that.
So, to kind of wrap up our September call-up discussion, I wanted to another name that's like Corey, you mentioned him earlier, Bradley Zimmer. Everybody thinks that this could be just an automatic. Yeah, he's playing well in Columbus. He deserves to get called up. Yeah, he deserves to get called up. Not arguing that. The question is, will the Indians call him up? Because then we have to get into the whole issue. I'm not going to pretend to understand everything about Super 2 and service time and all that. I get the gist of what they're trying to do. They're trying to as you can. And we saw that when they called up Francisco Lindor. They waited to call him up in his rookie season until June or whatever the date was for the Super 2 deadline. Control. The question is, do the Indians, as a Lindor type of prospect, top prospect in the organization? You would think so, but then you look at Tyler Naquin, who's also not at Zimmer or Lindor's level, but pretty high up in the prospect rankings this year, gets the job right out of spring training, and he's been up pretty much the whole season. A bit between AAA, but they clearly weren't worried about Super 2 status with him. So, of Bradley Zimmer, do they call him up now? Do they give him a job out of spring training? Do what they did with Francisco Lindor, wait until June of next season before we actually see him on patrolling the outfield at Progressive Field. So, Corey, what are your thoughts?
I hope it doesn't become a situation of control because if you call him up now, you essentially use an option, and there's all kinds of logistics behind that. I'm concerned, and again, I mentioned it earlier. I hope with getting Coco Crisp and now Yandy Diaz coming up, hopefully, that it doesn't create a huge logjam in the outfield. Again, Rajay Davis, Lonnie Chisenhall, Tyler Naquin, they've all been solid out there this season, and this is all losing Michael Brantley, who they're going to get back next season. So, again, and that's determining how effective he's going to be. That's not going to be seen until day one when he's on the field. So this is kind of a conflict of interest. It's the control over him. Do you use up one of those options? Do you let him play now? And I hope they don't draw it out like they did Lindor. Now, of course, Lindor was well worth the wait, and Zimmer very well could be as well. But I hope they don't do this as a, and then come out and say, well, it's a business move. We're keeping him in the minors. I hope they don't do that. I hope they don't do, if they don't do it, I hope it's for the right reasons. And maybe it is because, they don't create the log jam in the outfield, or maybe they don't, they don't expend anything, with every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So if Zimmer has to come up, then maybe one of these bullpen arms or starter arms that we talked about has to go down. There's certain situations where that would be okay if he didn't come up, but just for to be a business move, I think that's being cheap. I think that's being a little ridiculous. This is your best shot at a World Series, and I'm talking about Cleveland. This is the best shot at a World Series since 2007. And I'll say this is even bigger a shot already than it was in 13. This is a different feel than it was in 13 when they made the wild card game. This is a way different feel. This is your best shot since 07. I think you go all in on it. I think you got to bring Zimmer up. You got to have him play, and you got to have him hit, because if you don't, then, use him as a pinch runner or whatever. But if you're doing it for a, quote, business move, I think that's hogwash. I think that would be absolutely ridiculous.
There's a couple of things that I think will play into Zimmer possibly coming up this month, and you mentioned one of them, and that's the amount of outfielders that the Indians have. That playing time is going to be scarce anyway. And Terry Francona, even though Zimmer is a top prospect, with all the outfielders he has, even if you wanted to, it would be tough to find playing time, given how the guys like you mentioned, Chisenhall, Davis, Almonte, even though he's not postseason eligible. Now Coco Chris. Brandon Geyer's been good for the Indians. It's just a very tough situation. Not they're going to really bring up Zimmer and be able to give him the chance to play. Because I think if you call up Zimmer this month, you have to give him the chance to play, because you really want to get a sense of where he is in his development. And you can't tell much from a September call-up, even if he played regularly, but it would help you get that sense and give you a little bit of kind of an outline of his timeline heading into spring training next year. Because I think regardless of what happens this month, he's going to get a pretty long look in spring training, whether or not a June call-up or whether or not it's to give him a job on the team out of spring training. He's going to get a pretty long look in big league camp next spring, and that will make things very interesting. So this September will just have to do with whether or not they feel like he can get enough playing time to really gauge his timeline, his development timeline, and two, whether or not he can really make an impact on the team. The other thing I wanted to mention is Columbus. Recently, he has had a little bit of struggles. He batted .323 in July. So far in August, he's only batting .244. Strikeouts are starting to creep back up on him a little bit. He has 33 in 25 games, whereas he had like 6 in 25 games. So strikeouts have been a problem for him going back and forth all season. So they could use that as a reason too, that right now he's just not ready. That he's going through, whether it's mechanical issues at the plate or got his swing is long right now. Maybe he's just not ready. I mean, simple as that too. So I'm interested to see how they handle the Zimmer situation. To be honest, if I were to make a prediction, I would say we probably won't see Zimmer this season, but we will see him a lot in spring training. So get ready for that.
That's so weird to think, because, before the season started in spring training, you would have thought, okay, this is the year that Bradley makes his stride. He hits his stride. He gets to AAA. He tears it up, and then he's here before postseason or before a playoff run. I don't think he's a bad player or anything. I just think that it's a little slower than maybe what people projected him to be. Not that that's a bad thing either. A little time down in the minors for a little more seasoning doesn't hurt. But I just hope that they don't keep him down or send him up for the wrong reasons. I hope the organization makes the right call on him. With Francisco Lindor, it was kind of like, finally he's here, but he turned out to be worth the wait. Maybe Zimmer's going to be that case as well, but I just hope they handle the situation correctly.
I think they will. And I still get people asking whether or not they should have called up Lindor earlier or not. And you know what? If they called him up earlier, maybe he would have played well. But I don't think they were wrong in their decision making, even if it was strictly a business move. I mean, you could argue that Lindor wasn't ready at the time. He wasn't hitting as well as expected and stuff like that. I don't want to get into that whole debate, but I think that the Indians will handle Zimmer right. And plus, with Frazier gone, he's pretty much their top priority now as far as prospects go. So they're really gonna be careful on how they handle him.
I think they'll do okay with it, but again, we won't know until it happens.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us tonight. We touched on a lot. We got a lot of stuff coming. Hopefully, I wake up tomorrow morning and I see that Yandy Diaz is coming up to Cleveland. That's what I want to hear. The next couple of days, I want to wake up in the morning, pick up my phone, see an update, say Indians recall Yandy Diaz from AAA Columbus, and the other guys we talked about too. Pleco, Merritt, Morimondo. The other thing to consider too is that Columbus has clinched their division. They're heading to the playoffs, so I don't think they're going to strip that roster dry. So guys down there try to help Columbus win another Governor's Cup in the International League. So everything's going to be interesting the next couple days, next week or so. See when rosters expand. Always an exciting time of year. See some of the guys we followed all year finally get their shot at the major league level. Congratulations to Percy Garner. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. Glad to see your journey finally end. And hopefully we get to see a lot more of you in the next coming year or years, hopefully. So, Corey, any final thoughts?
I'm ready to go. Final note, Andrew Kalika, he left Mahoning Valley. He was promoted up to Lake County this week. Leads as the team's all-time leader in single-season batting average, on-base percentage, and slugging percentage. So congratulations to Andrew there. The Scrappers, how about them? They started 5-17, and they worked their record up to get within a few games of a wild card chase in the New York Penn League. So good season for them. They're wrapping up over the weekend. Other than that, Jake, I'm sure we'll be talking next week about some of these calls when they happen. I'm ready to go.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us today. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to follow us on Twitter for all the updates and all the stuff on the site. Corey's at CD Kristen. I'm at Jake D Baseball. And like I said, I got Arizona coming up for Instructional League and Fall League, so that'll be interesting and fun for me. I can't wait, and I'll be providing a lot of content from there too. And the minor league seasons wrap up, I'll be doing some stuff for Akron at the in a playoff spot, and if things go well this weekend, they will be postseason. So keep your eye out for stuff on that. So that's going to do it for Corey Christen. I'm Jake Duncan for the Farm Report Podcast, and we say to you, have a good one.